Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Marino Ravenberg here again, as always, and as usual. As you can tell, as always, and as usual, based on the header of this video, I'm simply talking to Mashik, and while I'm talking to him, he can simply spectate. And optionally, if he has any questions, simply answer them at the end of this video. I'm going to briefly cover the natal chart of a very sick, twisted individual. Her name is Katherine Knight. She's an Australian murderer and whatnot, and oh boy, she has strong cannibalistic tendencies, you name it, the whole 9 yards. Now, let me just share my screen. Hold on for a second. Now, be quiet, people, please. Everyone be quiet and listen while I show everything. Listen for yourself.
A woman out in Australia, after horribly mistreating her boyfriends and husbands over the course of her entire life, ended up committing one of the most infamous, heinous crimes in the history of the country.
I'm gonna play this for a minute or two, and then I'm gonna skip to the middle.
This year, I've got yet another video that will ruin your appetite for sure. This one takes place out in Australia, where a woman, after suffering a horrible childhood, decided to create an even worse childhood for her own children by doing what she did. Going back to the very beginning, Barbara and Jack Ruffin had just gotten married, living in a small town called Aberdeen in Hunter Valley, an area of New South Wales in Australia. They had 4 kids together, making up a pretty nice little nuclear family. That was until Barbara decided to start cheating on her husband with his own best friend and co-worker, a man named Katherine Knight. The local backlash to this adulterous fling was so bad that Barbara and Ken had to leave town, moving over to a place called Marie. None of Barbara's sons wanted to move with her, disgusted at what she had done. The 2 older ones stayed with their father, while the 2 younger ones went out to live with their aunt in Sydney. Barbara ended up firing out about 4 more babies with Ken, including a pair of twin girls. One of these girls was named Katherine.
Now, you can already tell that this woman, Katherine Knight, well, her mother didn't look all too good. Let's continue.
Katherine was doomed to grow up in a dysfunctional, unconventional family, to say the least. When Katherine was about 4 years old, Barbara's ex-husband died, and those 2 sons were forced to come live with Barbara, and the family got even bigger. But the sons couldn't really help it. They were left with nowhere to go, forcing them to live with Barbara and the man that had torn their family apart. Ken was, as you might expect, a pretty awful guy. He was a violent drunk who would often force himself on Barbara, sometimes up to 10 times a day or more. Barbara, oddly, shared stories about these incidents with her young daughters, giving them a very twisted idea of how a relationship is supposed to work.
So yeah, you can already see what time it is. Horrible household, a lot of pain and suffering. You see how ugly the people in question are. Now, you can wait and you can watch this video in full at the end screen or linked in the description below alongside the Wikipedia article on Katherine Knight. But the header speaks for itself, from hitting her husbands to eating them. She was not only a murderer, but she was a murderous cannibal. I'm going to skip to an interesting section. Like I said, you can watch the entire video if you want to know the entire story. But listen to this. I'm going to start playing at 13 minutes and 2 seconds for like a minute or 2 at most.
Body into the doorway to the lounge room. She, using her set of knives, completely removed all of the skin from his body. According to a pathologist, doing so would have taken her at least a whole 40 minutes. She then removed his head and took it into the kitchen. She cooked his head and several other body parts on the stove, serving them up with some baked potato, pumpkin, cabbage, and carrots along with some gravy. She took...
How would you like decapitated head with some pumpkin and gravy and whatnot? That's those are the horrible acts that this woman committed. Now, the reason I'm showing you all of this is because something very interesting. Now, here comes the astrological chart. I've already done videos like these, but not all too many or all too much. Now, behold her astrological chart. Behold. Hold on, let me just... Oh, crap. I'm sorry. Mashik, you can still see this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything is clear.
Let me just double check, people. Everything is clear, okay. Sometimes Zoom can be a bit annoying with the floating meeting controls. Now, anyways, Katherine Knight, she was born on the October 24th, 1955, sorry, I repeat. October 24th, 1955 on a Monday, in Tenterfield, Australia. Got this from Wikipedia, and I checked her time of birth, and this is the time of birth I came up with using my own power as always, and as usual. And yeah, this is her chart. I can immediately point out vital things. Now, for starters, you're seeing a heavily afflicted Uranus. Uranus is in Leo's house, one of the weakest signs it can be in. It's conjunct the 5th house, and it's opposed both Chiron and the moon in Aquarius. It is also square the sun, and it is square Neptune. Tremendous levels of mental instability and bipolarness and whatnot. The Earth is in Taurus. In Taurus's house, conjunct the 2nd house, stands for a heavy reliance on financial partners, or the adverse, but it's more the former than the latter. Jupiter and Pluto there in Leo, also in the 5th house. Square Saturn, both of them are square Saturn, indicating tremendous levels of dysfunctionality with romantic partners. And yeah, look at this. Look at how a strong Scorpio influence. The Sun, Venus, and Saturn are all in Scorpio, in Scorpio's house. I repeat, the Sun, Venus, and Saturn are all in Scorpio's house. And we've got even Juno as an icing on the cake, so to speak, conjunct in Scorpio, in the 9th house, the house of Sagittarius, but conjunct the 9th house which is ruled by Scorpio, or which was ruled by Scorpio when she was born. Again, one of the main things that Scorpio deals with is debt, and specifically for severely mentally disturbed individuals and people that are violent, murder, anything relating to debt. So yeah, now you're seeing why she was such a murderous, cannibalistic woman. And the main driving force was just mania. She was maniacal. That's why you're seeing Neptune here being in Libra as well. Like I said, square Uranus. Neptune is even square the moon as well, square Chiron. And it just goes on like that. Just goes on. Saturn being square these two, it's just horrible. You're seeing the part of fortune being opposed midheaven, which is ruled by Sagittarius. And you've got Lilith and Pallas also in Sagittarius. They're both conjunct midheaven and both opposed the part of fortune. And this is most likely the reason why she decided to also cook her husbands, or at least some of them, and serve them up for dinner. Sagittarius, one of the things it stands for is large animals. And the part of fortune is in the 4th house that deals with one of the main things is cooking. So you can see the connection, the opposition. She essentially viewed her husbands as large animals, like the way a hunter views game. And then he skins it and he cooks it and makes a delicious meal out of it. And that's what this bitch was thinking about. So yeah, this is what the chart of this woman looks like. You can find it also linked in the description below. Download it at your own behest. And that's essentially it. That's all that I have to say on the matter. Before I go, Mashi, did you have any questions? Anything?
No, I'm just essentially thinking, because ironically, I would expect that those kind of individual would have a lot of retrogrades, but essentially
That's
in
not
her case,
necessary.
that's not the case
Not
in
necessary.
general.
Okay, because there is enough to make up for the lack of a retrograde in the way of squares and other negative aspects. I mean, I went over all of it. Oppositions, like deadly oppositions, literally and figuratively speaking, deadly squares. All the planets that deal with forcefulness and the zodiac signs. Scorpio being the main zodiac sign that deals with forcefulness, the primary one, are heavily emphasized, and not in a good way. Pluto, for example, is in Leo. Pluto is in one of the weakest signs it can be in. Pluto in Leo's house, not good. The fact that it's square Saturn, it stands for having destructive tendencies, and in her case, it stands for destructive tendency in the romantic field. So yeah, that's essentially it, guys.
Yeah.
Until next time, goodbye.